Hello everyone and welcome to the YouTube channel of BeingACCA. This is Tushita Gupta, ACCA affiliate, and in this video we are going to be solving the section A PM Kaplan kit for activity-based costing topic. Let's get started. A company produces a range of products and uses an absorption costing system. Which two of the following are unlikely to be a consequence of the company shifting to an ABC costing system? So we have to highlight over here that unlikely has to be ticked over here. Now let's read the statements. Indirect overheads will be shared between the products on a fairer basis. Yes, this is exactly what will happen when we are switching to the ABC system, because ABC allocates those costs according to their cost drivers, and that is why the costs are shared on a more fair basis. So this is completely true. Product pricing decisions will be improved. Yes, when we know exactly on which thing we are spending how much money, we will be able to better price our products. The prime production cost of each product will fall. Now, this will exactly be your answer. Why? Because when you are using ABC costing system, it is only the method of allocation which is changing. The cost remains the same. Only how the overheads are absorbed gets changed. So the prime production cost of each product will in fact remain the same. So statement 3 is something that will be one of the answers. We have to select two statements, right? Cost control on indirect overheads will be harder to achieve. Now this statement is also unlikely to be a consequence. Why? Because when you are using ABC costing system, what will happen? You will know exactly where you are spending how much amount of money, and this will help you rather to have a good cost control. So this is your answer, because this is unlikely. Now let's see the last statement. Total production cost of each product will change. Now again, this is unlikely. Why? Because only, as I said earlier, the method of allocation of your indirect overheads is going to change. Rest everything, the total remains the same. Only the distribution remains, is something that is changing. Now let's move to the 30th question. A company which makes two products, alpha and zeta, uses ABC to absorb its overheads. It has recently identified a new overhead cost pool for inspection costs and has decided that the cost driver is the number of inspections. So this is the total cost that is given to us. This is the production volume, 2500, 8000, machine hours, units, and inspections per batch. So what is the inspection cost per unit of product alpha? So first, let's have a look over here. Inspections per batch is 4 and inspections per batch is 1 for zeta. So first, let's find out how many batches are there. We are making 2500 and each batch has 500. So my number of batches, for first alpha is 2500 divided by 500, which will give me 5 batches. So I'm making 5 batches. In each batch, I'm making 500 units and my total becomes 2500. Now for zeta, again, I will divide 8000 by 1000. That means I am making 8 batches, right? So these are my number of batches. Now let's see, let's find out the number of inspections, right? So with respect to inspections, per batch we are needing 4. So for 5 batches, this will be 5 multiplied by 4, which gives me 20. Then for zeta, for one batch, I need only 1 inspection. So 1 multiplied by 8 batches will give me 8 inspections. Now I can see that in total, we are having 28 inspections, and the total inspection cost that we have is $250,000. So 250,000 divided by 28 will give me the cost that is taking per inspection, right? So my overhead absorption rate comes out to be, if I divide 250,000 by 28, I get 8928.57. So this is my absorption rate. Now I have to find this for alpha, and I want to find this per unit, right? So product alpha per unit. So this is something that is coming out for one inspection. So I can multiply this by the number of inspections that I'm needing for alpha, and then I can divide that by the total number of units that I'm making for alpha to find out the per unit cost. So if I take 8928.57, I multiply this by 20 because that is the number of inspections I need in total for alpha. And how many units am I making for alpha? This is 2500. So I divide this by 2500 and my final answer comes out to be 71.43, and option C is the right answer. Now moving on to 31st question. Which of the following statements are true regarding ABC and cost drivers? Now let's read the statements one by one. A cost driver is any factor that causes a change in the cost of an activity. Now this statement is absolutely correct. This is in fact the definition of cost drivers. Cost drivers are basically your long-term variable overhead costs, and this will be the volume of a particular activity to which these cost driver relates. And yes, again, second statement is also true. So for long-term variable overhead cost, the cost driver will definitely be your volume of activity, because when you are looking at something which is in the long term and which is variable, so variable will definitely mean that it varies according to the volume of activity, right? As much as you produce, the more will be the variable overhead cost. Traditional absorption costing tends to under allocate overhead costs to low volume products. Now this is also absolutely correct. Why? Because using traditional costing, this will so traditional absorption costing basically allocates your overheads according to the level of activity, according to the number of units. So if I am making lesser units of something, my overheads will also be lesser allocated to that product, irrespective of whether or not more of the costs are being incurred because of the low volume product. So traditional costing will under allocate these costs to the low volume products. So that is why option D becomes my answer. Now moving on to 32nd question. A company makes products A and B. It is experimenting with activity-based costing. Production setup costs are $12,000. Total production will be 20,000 units of each A and B. Each run is 1,000 units of A and 5,000 units of B. Using ABC, what is the setup cost per unit of A? So first of all, we see over here that our cost driver, whenever we are using ABC, we have a look at the cost driver. So the cost driver for setup cost is the number of setups. So we have the total cost given to us as $12,000. Let's find out how many setups are we making. So for product A, we are making 20,000 units, and in one batch, we are making 1,000 units. So the number of setups I am doing is 20,000 divided by 1000. This gives me 20 setups for product A. Similarly, I will find this out for product B. I am making 20,000 again for product B, and the number of units that are there in one run is 5,000. So that gives me 4. So the total number of setups that I'm doing is 24, and the total cost that I'm incurring is 12,000. So 12,000 divided by 20 plus 4, which is the total number of setups. Now I will get my cost for each setup. So 12,000 divided by 24 gives me $500. So for every one setup, I am incurring $500. Now for A, I can see that I am making how many runs? I am making 20 setups, right? So so the total cost for A becomes 500 multiplied by 20, and that gives you 10,000. So 10,000 is the total out of this 12,000 that will be allocated to product A. Then we have to find out per unit. So I will simply divide 10,000 with the number of units that I am making for A, which is 20,000. So 10,000 divided by 20,000 will give me my final answer. 10,000 divided by 20,000, and this gives me $0.5. So this is my final answer. We have to give our answer to the nearest cent. So 0.5 is the final answer. Moving on, which of the following statements is or are true regarding the activity-based costing? A cost pool is an activity which consumes resources and for which overhead costs are identified and allocated perfectly. This is, in fact, the definition of a cost pool. Now let's have a look at the second statement. An activity-based costing overhead absorption rate OAR is calculated in the same way as an absorption costing OAR and will result in the same OAR being calculated for each cost pool. Now this is absolutely rubbish. Why? Because activity-based costing will allocate the cost according to the cost drivers, whereas the absorption costing uses the level of activity or how many units we are producing. So our answer becomes option A. Moving on to 34th, a company uses activity-based costing to calculate the unit cost of its products. The figures for period 3 are as follows. We have production setup cost, total production 40,000 units of each product A and B. Each run is 2,000 and 5,000 for A and B. Now we have to find out the setup cost per unit of B. This is very similar to what we did just above. So again, our cost driver is the number of setups. The cost pool that we have is $84,000 and let's find out the number of setups again. So the total production is 40,000 for A and 40,000 for B. So for product A, how many setups am I doing? 40,000 divided by 2,000 and that gives me 20. And for product B, 40,000 divided by 5,000 and that gives me 8. So in total, I am making 20 plus 8, 28 setups. So my cost per setup that I can find is $84,000. $84,000 divided by total, which is 28. So per setup, my cost comes out to be $3,000. Now I have to find out for product B. So for product B, I am making a total of 8 setups. So 8 multiplied by 3,000 gives me 24,000. 24,000 becomes the total cost that has to be allocated to product B. Now we want to find it out for per unit. So I am simply going to divide 24,000 by the number of units and which is 40,000, right? So 24,000 divided by 40,000 and your final answer which you will enter is 0.6 and this wants to 2 decimal places, so I will enter 0.60. Otherwise, the computer will mark my answer wrong. So 0.60 will be entered. Moving on to 35, the ABC company manufactures 2 products, alpha and beta. The products are produced in very labor-intensive environment and use similar processes. Alpha and beta differ by volume. Beta is a high volume while alpha is a low volume. What do we mean by that? We are producing more of beta. As you can see, we are producing 12,000 of beta and alpha is only 1,200. So we have the details, okay, fixed overheads also. Using the traditional method of overhead absorption costing based on labor hours, what is the overhead cost per unit for each unit of alpha? So you have to use the traditional costing only over here. So the total that we have is 420,000 and this will be divided by your labor hours because that is what we have to base it on. So 420,000 divided by total labor hours. How many are our labor hours? We are requiring 5 for 1,200 and 5 for 12,000. So 5 multiplied by 1,200 gives me, just a moment, 5 multiplied by 1,200 gives me 6,000 hours. And again, 5 multiplied by 12,000 gives me 60,000 hours. So that means my total labor hours become 66,000. So I will divide 420,000 by 66,000 and this will give me my OAR, right? So 66, this gives me 6.36. So 6.36 becomes my overhead absorption rate and then this is per labor hour. Now I have to find out the overhead cost unit for each unit of product alpha. So this is 6.36 per labor hour and how many hours is one unit of alpha taking? 5 hours. So I will multiply 6.36 with 5 to find out my overhead cost which will be allocated to per unit for each unit of product alpha. So 6.36 multiplied by 5 gives me 31.818. So the question wants me to round it off to 2 decimal places. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. And my answer which I'm going to enter is $31.82, right? Moving on to 36, the ABC company, okay, this is a follow-up question on the same thing that we solved earlier. So we have to find out using the traditional method based what is the overhead cost per unit for beta. Now the same absorption rate of 6.36 that we calculated, and for beta again the rate will be same. Why? Because we will use the same rate of 6.36 which we calculated above, and I will multiply this by the number of hours of beta. So this is 5, and again I will get my answer as $31.82. Now moving on to 37th. This is again seems to be a follow-up. Yes, it is. Using activity-based costing as the method of overhead absorption, what is the overhead cost per unit for each unit of alpha? Now, in this question, we will have to split all of these costs according to their cost drivers. Now, first of all, 100,000 is something which is your volume related. So this will be, spread according to the labor hours. So with regards to your labor hours, we have 66,000 labor hours, and we can find it out for product alpha as, so for volume related, I can write for alpha over here, because for alpha we have to do the calculations. So this will be 100,000 multiplied by 6,000 divided by 66,000, which is the total, right? So this will come out to be 6 divided by 66 multiplied by 100,000 gives me 9090.09. So this gives me 90. Right. So this is what I get as my volume related in total for product A. Now I will go for the purchasing related cost. So for purchasing related cost, my driver is number of purchase orders. So with regards to purchase orders, we have total 160, and for product alpha, we are ordering 75. So how will this be split? This will be split according to, I am writing this calculation above. So 145,000 will be split by 75, which is the orders we are placing for alpha, and dividing this by the total, which is 160. So with this, I will find out 75 divided by 160 multiplied by 145,000 gives me 67,968.75. So this is what I get for purchasing related. Now let's work it out for the setup related. So for setup, the total is this much, and the driver is the number of setups. So I will similarly perform the calculations once again for setups. So 175,000 multiplied by 40, which is the setups we are doing for alpha, divided by total, which is 100. So 40 by 100 multiplied by 175,000 gives me a total of 70,000. So if I add all of these costs up, these are the total overheads that will be allocated to product alpha. So the total that comes out is 968.75 plus 9090.91. So I get my total over here as 147,059.66. And if I divide this with the number of units, I will have my per unit cost. The number of units that I have for alpha is 1200. So if I just divide this with 1200, I will have my answer as 122.549, which will give me 122.55. So we are done with 37. Let's move on to 38 now. Now this is a different scenario. Let's read it from the scratch. We have same type of material, skilled workers, okay, volume, material, labor. Using ABC, what is the total fixed overhead amount to be absorbed into each unit of product B? So now we have to find out for product B. So first of all, the fixed overheads that we have over here, material is this much, cost driver is the volume of material. For general fixed overheads, these have to be absorbed on the basis of labor hours, and these are 180,000. So first of all, let's perform our calculation for this 100,000. With regards to this, the total material that we are buying is, we are material per unit is $10, and we are purchasing 1,000. So the total material that we are buying over here is 1,000 multiplied by 10 plus 2000 multiplied by 20. So this gives you $50,000. And the fixed cost that pertain to this is 100,000. So my overhead that will be absorbed into product A will be 1000 divided by 10,000 divided by 50,000 multiplied by 100,000. So the total cost that we have is 100,000, and this will be multiplied by how much product B is costing us 40,000. So 40,000 divided by 50,000. So this is the first part of the cost that will be absorbed to product B. So 4 by 5 into 100,000 gives you $80,000. So out of the 100,000 which remains to the fixed cost, 80,000 is for product B. Now I will find out for the general fixed costs. So this we have to do on the basis of labor hours. Let's first find out how much is our total labor hours. So the labor that we are using per unit is for A we are using 1000 multiplied by 5, and for B we are using 2000 multiplied by 20. So for this we will have 5000, and for this product B we have 40,000. So the total comes out to be 45,000, and for product B if I want to allocate these costs, so this will be I am solving this over here, 180,000 multiplied by how much we are incurring for product B, 40,000, and how much is the total? 40,000 plus 45 plus 5,000, which gives you 45,000. So if I find out how much this will be, so this comes out to be 160,000. So 80,000 and plus 160,000. This is the total that will go into product B, and for per unit I will simply divide this by the number of units. So I'm adding 160 and 80. 160 plus 80 will give me 240,000, and this divided by the number of units is 2,000, and with this I will have my answer as $120 per unit of product B. Now moving on to question number 39. A company is changing its costing system from traditional absorption costing based on labor hours to activity-based costing. It has overheads of these many, which are related to material deliveries. So we have the units required, delivery size, all of the information that is given to us over here. And then let's read the requirement. Assuming that the company uses the number of deliveries as its cost driver, what will be the effect on the costs per unit following the change from absorption costing to activity-based costing? Place a tick in the boxes. So here we will have to work out the entire calculation for us to decide the increase or decrease. Now, first of all, absorption costing is something that will be common to all. So with regards to absorption costing, I can see that 156 is the total, and divided by the total number of units, 1000 plus 2000 plus 3000 will give me 6000. So using the traditional costing system, first of all, I am writing this over here. So with the traditional system, my absorption rate that will be used for each unit will be 156,000 divided by the total, which is 6,000, and this will give you $26 for each unit of all these products that we have over here. Now let's find out using our ABC costing. So with regards to ABC, we'll first have to find out the number of deliveries, right? So we have the delivery size and we have the units also given to us. So the number of deliveries, first of all, for product X, so number of deliveries, so X, Y, and Z. For X, we are requiring how many deliveries? 1000 divided by 200, which will give you 5. For Y, 2000 divided by 400, which will again give you 5. And then for Z, 3000 divided by 1000, which gives you 3. So the total that we have over here becomes 13 deliveries. And then let's find out the cost per delivery. So the delivery cost is 156,000, and the total deliveries that we are doing, so 156,000 divided by total deliveries, which is 13. So if I find out the cost per delivery, this comes out to be 12,000. So $12,000 is the cost per delivery. Now let's see how will we allocate these costs. So for X, how much will we allocate? Out of one delivery costs 12,000, so 5 deliveries will be 60,000. Again 60,000, and 3 deliveries will be 12 multiplied by 3, which gives you 36,000. So this is how the allocation will happen. And now we find the per unit. So for per unit, I'm simply dividing this with the number of units. So this is the cost of deliveries, and we can say that this is the total. Now per unit, so for per unit, I'm just going to divide this by the number of units. Number of units is 1000. 60,000 divided by 1000 gives you 60. Then 60,000 divided by 2000 gives you 30. And then for Z, 36,000 divided by 3000 will give you, just let me perform this. 36 divided by 3 will give you 12. So 12 is the cost per unit that we are having over here. Now we have to compare it with the $26, and then we'll see if there has been an increase or decrease. Now with traditional it was 26, and with ABC it has increased to 60. So for product X it has increased. Now for product Y it was 26 earlier, now it is 30. So this has also increased. Then for product Z, it was 26 earlier, it is only 12 now. So this has decreased. With this, we've come to the last question for this topic. In the next video, we'll solve target costing. So let's read the question. DRP Limited has recently introduced an activity-based costing system. It manufactures 3 products, the details of which are set out below. What is the budgeted machine setup per unit of product R? So we have to allocate the machine setup costs over here. For machine setup costs, what is the cost driver? The machine setup per batch. So let's find out how much will be our total setups. So for that we need, first of all, we are producing 100,000 units, and each batch we are having 100 units. So how many batches am I making? I am making, let me label this over here, D, R and P. So the batches becomes 100,000 divided by 100, which gives you 1,000 batches. So these are my batches. Similarly, for product R, 100,000 divided by 50 will give you 2,000 batches, and then 50,000 divided by 25 will give you 2,000 batches again for product P. So these are the these are the number of batches. Now machine setup per batch. Machine per batch, we are needing 3, 4 and 6. So total setups that we need is 3,000, 8,000 and 12,000. So the total, if I add 3,000, 8,000 and 12,000, I get total number of setups as 23,000. And I have to find this out for product R. So for product R, I am doing 8,000 setups. So 8,000 divided by 23,000 multiplied by how much is the total cost for machine setup is 150,000. So if I multiply this by 150,000, I will have my final answer. So this will be 8,000 divided by 23,000 multiplied by 1,50,000, and this gives me 52,173. Now they have asked me per unit, so I will divide this by the number of units. I got 52,173.913. I divide this by the number of units, which is 100,000. So if I just divide this by 100,000, I get my answer as 0.5217, which will make option B as the correct answer. With this, we have come to an end to the first topic under specialized costing techniques, and this was activity-based costing. In the next video, we begin with target costing. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you so much for watching.